I am pissed off tonight. So, I'm gonna rant about this Reddit comment someone put on my account. Or, this guy. Basically, I posted reasons why I left Christianity, or reasons why I believe it's a toxic religion. And this guy writes this whole 4-paragraph comment. He starts off kind of weird, just saying, like, I'm not interested in your identifying with any religion. I don't know what he means by that. But this person's apparently a Jesuit. But what you're presenting as Catholic teaching as hell and mortal sin is not accurate. At the risk of hyperbole, it's almost the opposite of accurate. The implication is not that most people are going to hell. In fact, the last 3 popes spoke of the reasonable hope that all will be saved. Whatever you choose to accept, reasonable hope, it's almost certainly the opposite of most people are going to hell. I put this in Claude to summarize it. So, yeah. So it never says anywhere in here that most people are going to hell. So that guy just made this up. And I never said that in my video, that that's what the Catholic Church taught. And I say in my comment, I never said that it was Catholic doctrine that most people are going to hell. But looking at tradition, besides what popes said, which is not considered doctrine in Catholicism, which is, I'm fine with you saying, okay, Pope said there's a reasonable hope. But first of all, my argument wasn't that most people are going to hell. My argument was, I never said that. My argument was against the idea of hell at all. And I was talking about Catholic doctrine, not what popes said, which is what a lot of tried Catholics wouldn't consider what the Pope said to even be very meaningful compared to what the tradition says. And you have people like St. Augustine saying that many souls will be damned. St. John Chrysostom, I forget what he says, but he basically says something like most people are going to be damned. That's what he said, and that I will say that is a quote that he said. But St. Augustine and St. Jerome just kind of talk about in general, there's a lot of people who have sinned and are going to be damned because of it. So, yeah, I don't know where this guy got this idea and why he's saying that it's almost the opposite of accurate. And then he's talking about, he said, if you're talking about mortal sin, needing a grave matter with full knowledge and full consent, this is not at all the same as saying one needs perfect ignorance or full membership. It doesn't follow at all. This person is tying mortal sin in with what I was saying about the church's teaching on salvation outside the church, which those are 2 separate doctrines. The teaching of mortal sin is for Catholics in the church. The teaching of salvation for people outside the church is about people, like I said, people who are outside the church, if they can be saved or not. So mortal sin doesn't even have anything to do with this. I guess what he's trying to make the connection is maybe that not being in the church is mortal sin, but I don't think that's how. I mean, maybe you could say it's like that. So let's see what he's saying. Why would there be a qualifier of full to full knowledge and full consent without your perfect ignorance? Okay, so no, this actually is very different. Mortal sin talks about full knowledge and full consent, but perfect ignorance, this is talking about the doctrine of people if they can be saved outside the church. 2 completely different doctrines. So the doctrine of the church is that unless you have perfect ignorance, um, of the Catholic Church, that the Catholic Church is a true church, you cannot be saved if you're not a member of the Catholic Church. That's what the Catholic doctrine is, okay? Not something I made up. This thing on mortal sin, full knowledge and full consent, that applies to something completely different. Like, the church doesn't say that you need full knowledge of the Catholic Church in order to, if the church doesn't say you need full knowledge of the Catholic Church if you're outside of the Catholic Church in order for it to be damnable. No, the church says if you don't have perfect ignorance, you can be damned by not being in the church. So, assumes any exposure represents knowledge sufficient to understand the full ramifications of a choice. Yeah, again, that's talking about mortal sin, not what I'm talking about. That just isn't the case with any other decision, so I don't know why you assume there's any distinction between mortal and venial sins if lack of perfect ignorance is damnable. Again, I'm not talking about mortal and venial sins. I'm talking about the church's doctrine of salvation of those outside the church, okay? This person doesn't know what he's talking about. Gross distortion of doctrine. But given the rad-trad angle, I'm not surprised yet. You don't know what you're talking about. That is the official doctrine. If you are a Catholic, the doctrine of the Catholic Church, it doesn't matter if you're a trad or you're a modern Catholic. The doctrine is what the doctrine is. And you have to follow the doctrine. Otherwise, you're a heretic according to the Catholic Church's own doctrine. And then this person talks about how the rad-trads are a contemporary reactionary movement. Gives some kind of source here. Associated with right-wing politics, anti-Semitism, white supremacy, and reactionary gender roles. So I think that these all can play into it, but I think that these play into it, but I wouldn't say that they're the sole causes of modern traditional Catholicism. I do think that modern rad-trads are like kind of LARPing, like they're role-playing in a sense, and probably aren't acting exactly as traditional Catholics would back then. But at the same time, you look at the way some of the traditional Catholics acted back then, like not J.K. Rowling, J.R.R. Tolkien. He was a very traditional Catholic, and his reaction to the Mass being changed to English was that he would stand up in the Mass and just shout the Latin responses when the priest was trying to celebrate the Mass in English. So, I mean, take an example like that and just see the writings. Like, the rad-trad movement, I feel like this person's acting like it doesn't come out of, like it's coming out of nothing. Like this, you have very old priests like Father Ripperger, who was around before Vatican II. Like, it's pretty well documented what the church went through between Vatican and Vatican II, and that there was a pretty big rift after Vatican II. So to say that this is just because of white supremacy, right-wing politics, anti-Semitism, like this is all stuff that is like, maybe except anti-Semitism, but anti-Semitism had nothing to do with the reaction that was to Vatican II. I would say that modern rad-trads are more of a reactionary movement to modernism and Vatican II, but they aren't carrying on the tradition into the present. They're drawing religious sources in reaction to liberal. I mean, you can say that, but the religious sources they're drawing on are the official doctrines of the church, like the Council of Trent or the Vatican Council, or people like Fulton Sheen, who was not back before Vatican II. He wouldn't even be called like a modernist, but he was what we would call now very traditional. But he was just one of the most popular TV shows in America in general. And, this is the kind of material that I'm talking about. I didn't even mention gender roles, white supremacy, anti-Semitism, right-wing politics. I didn't mention any of that. I only talked about the doctrines that were being taught. And then this person's talking about, okay, they're like Protestant fundamentals, not traditional, aimed at fighting social issues with a postmodern appeal to cherry-picked imagined past. While not all rad-trads are sedevacantist, there is sympathy for those strands of remnant ideologies and Jewish Freemason conspiracies. While not all rad trads are state of a conscious, there is sympathy for those strands of remnant ideologies in Jewish Freemason. I don't know what he's talking about with this Jewish Freemason conspiracy. I don't know what he's talking about. Is he talking about um, there is sympathy for those remnant? I don't know what the context is with that. I know that Catholicism, like rad trad Catholics, will talk about Freemasonry sometimes. Some people will talk about Jewish, like they'll talk about Jewish history, and some people even point to the history and say that they were problematic people, the Jews, like in that they ruined the countries they went to. Um, but yeah, I don't think that was. I don't really know what this person's talking about. Which is why it's not strange that they're at odds with the church rather than being representation of the mainstream church. Certainly at odds with any hint of reasonable hope coming out of the magisterium. So this person's saying that the rad trads are at odds with the reasonable hope quotes, which kind of, why would this person even mention that if they know that I come from a rad trad background? Like, yeah, I look, I'm not saying that all Catholics believe in what I believe. I'm saying this is what the doctrine teaches, and the rad trads believe in what the doctrine teaches. And like, I give them credit for that, because why would you call yourself Catholic and not believe in what the Catholic Church teaches? When the Catholic Church themselves say you have to believe in these things to be Catholic, like it's just there's a cognitive dissonance there with like kind of modernist Catholics who don't believe in the official doctrine of the Church. So anyway, they're at odds with the church. No, that state of a conscious are at odds with the church. People who break off from the church are at odds with it. But most traditional Catholics I'm talking about traditional Catholics in the church specifically, because that's what I was. And I'm not talking about state of a conscious. So no, traditional Catholics are not at odds with the church. In terms of they're willing to follow doctrine. Maybe they are in terms of like the more modern views that are more liberal, but this is getting into tricky territory when you're talking about what you define as the church, in terms of like, is the modern kind of sentiment more important, or is the doctrine more important, even though it's older? And I appreciate what he says here. Again, I'm glad you deconstructed from the list of concepts you posted here, so none of this quibbling should minimize or negate that. They are all horrible concepts. Then why the fuck did you post this in the first place? Like, it doesn't even make any sense. You're pulling out of your ass these criticisms that just don't seem to have any grounding and are just plain wrong. And it gets 3 likes, or 4 likes. I disliked it. But, do people not even read? It seems like the people who like this just don't understand what the actual doctrines are. And I'm imagining they're Christians or Catholics who maybe are modern Christians or Catholics who just don't like the idea of someone leaving it all together. So they just, upvote whatever comment kind of contradicts what I'm saying. Even though at the end he kind of says that everything I said was right. So this made me pissed. I know it's probably not a good sign that I'm getting so pissed off at Reddit comments. But look at this one. You're preaching to the fucking choir. 8 upvotes. Dude, the whole subreddit is deconstruction. The whole fucking point of the subreddit is shit like this. I even put a tag on it. It's just a general deconstruction thing. What the fuck are you expecting in the deconstruction subreddit? It got 8 likes. Who the fuck liked this shit? Imagine going to any subreddit of if it's an atheist subreddit and someone talks about reasons of atheism being true. Someone writes, "You're preaching to the fucking choir." Yeah, no shit. That's what the whole fucking point of the subreddit is. Kill the word concupiscence. Good list. All right, let's see where the word concupiscence was used. Okay, so this person's saying that after this, it's shit. That is not a good list. Adam and Eve had no concupiscence, yet still sinned. The logic collapses. I don't get what the problem is with this. I think maybe it was a little unclear, this part. This is the thing that I hate, that I didn't have time to just write out my entire transcript, and it would have just been a fucking mess anyway because I don't have all my points together. It's kind of scattered throughout the video. So I wanted AI to rewrite it based on the transcript. But the problem with AI is that for some reason it misses vital points, and maybe I didn't give it enough of a prompt, but there's reasoning behind this. Like, if you don't have concupiscence, that means you have no inclination to sin. And if Adam and Eve chose to turn against God with no inclination to sin, what does that say about God who created them? Like, it just doesn't make any sense. Like, knowing that they had no desire to turn against God, but they still turned against God. Like, it just doesn't make sense. And they'll say, oh, well, they made the free choice against God. What does this say about them as beings? If it says in the Bible, God created man and woman essentially good. He created Adam and Eve essentially good. So what does it say about them if they have no desire at all whatsoever to sin, and yet they sin? And obviously it's their moral fault because God punishes them for it gravely. In fact, he punishes them so badly that all of their descendants suffer for it, even though later in the Bible it says that, oh no, God doesn't punish the children of sinners. God only punishes the sinners themselves. Meanwhile, in another part of the Bible, by the way, it says God will punish the sinners down to their third and fourth generation. The whole fucking Bible is a joke. It's just self-contradictory to the brim. And then you get, like, the fact that people still believe it just shows how depraved people are. And I don't say that in the sense of, like, what I mean by depraved is people are so insecure and so desperate to cling to this that they're willing to settle for something that makes absolutely no sense. They're willing to settle for a definition of God that is like a total asshole. They're willing to ignore basic problems like needless suffering of animals, needless suffering of children, like children dying of cancer. They're willing to ignore these basic things because the Christian worldview is so essential for them. And let this be a warning for anyone who's not Christian, just how toxic it is, that when you get into Christianity, it belittles you so much, and you don't see it at first. It happens over time, but it belittles you so much, very clearly, and it brings you so low, and you think so poorly of yourself that you literally cannot live without this faith. And that's why this faith continues, I think, in a big part. I think that's why it spreads, in the same way that neglectful parenting can spread from the parent to the child because they just don't have the resources emotionally to raise their child healthily. These memes, this religious meme spreads. So I don't know what that person was talking about till after concupiscence. So they disagree with this. God commanded genocide, permitted slavery, and condemned homosexuality with death, while treating slavery as less urgent than homosexuality. Christians selectively literalized scripture to fit modern comfort. This I wish was elaborated a little more, but I think the point still stands. They don't agree with Christianity causing shame for homosexuals and the Bible explicitly condemning homosexuality. They don't believe that moralizing things that people can't control produces shame and not reform. They don't believe that this pattern is present, that this book, like, what the fuck is he talking about? That's half the goddamn list. So that doesn't make any sense. What is this? 4 hours ago. This is one of the most lucid breakdowns I've read here. Your point about the narcissistic abuse model in the church is spot on. Breaking down the self-worth of the individual just to sell them the cure of confession. I'm actually finalizing my formal apostasy this Sunday, Easter. I don't know what a formal apostasy is. Are you going to like go to your church and public? That's interesting. Let's see what let's see what EWTN has to say about apostasy, leaving the church. Let's see. The church's moral theology has always distinguished between objective or material sin and formal sin. The person who holds something contrary to the Catholic faith is materially a heretic. Oh yeah, this is one thing Catholics do is to get around the fact that the Pope has said and done things that are like clearly heretical. In order for them to justify that the Pope is still the Pope, they make this distinguish. And look, actually, I won't say that this is invented for that. I think this has been around before that's happened, but nevertheless, it's confusing. But they have formal and material sin. They possess the matter of heresy, theological error. Thus, prior to the Second Vatican Council, it was quite common to speak of non-Catholic Christians as heretics, since many of their doctrines are objectively contrary to Catholic teaching. Okay, blah blah blah. Such persons are. All right. I guess I'll have to read this. It's fucking so unnecessarily complicated. Many of the doctrines are objectively contrary. Blah blah blah. We only use the term heretic to describe those who formally and thus willingly embrace what they know to be contrary to the revealed truth. Oh, interesting. So heretics only describe those who formally and thus willingly embrace what they know to be contrary to the revealed truth, not necessarily the truth. Revealed truth means scripture and church doctrine. So that's a kind of a tricky roundabout way of saying, yeah, it's the same goddamn thing. A heretic is someone who contradicts what the church teaches. Fucking hell. They wrap it in such fucking bullshit language that it's hard to distinguish. Such persons are formally, in their conscience before God, guilty of heresy. Thus, the person who is objectively in heresy is not formally guilty of heresy if, 1, their ignorance of the truth is due to their upbringing in a particular religious tradition, to which they may even be scrupulously faithful. I think what this is talking about is like somebody is raised with like a heretical tradition, like without knowing. So like, let's say their parents are Gnostics. This is not talking about pagans or anyone outside the church. This is talking about people inside the church that are raised in a way that they believe something different. And 2, they are not morally responsible for their ignorance of the truth. That seems like just like a loop there. They are not morally Wait, how do you define someone being morally responsible for their ignorance of the truth? Okay, here we go. This is the principle of invincible ignorance. This is what I was talking about, perfect ignorance, invincible ignorance. This refers to people it says that outside of the Catholic Church, only people with invincible ignorance can be saved, which Catholic theology has always recognized as excusing before God. The same is true of apostasy. The person who leaves not just the Catholic Church, but who even abandons Christ himself, is materially an apostate. Well, according to Catholic theology, if you abandon the church, you are abandoning Christ himself. That the Catholic tradition is that the Catholic Church is the body of Christ and the head of Christ. Like the Pope is associated with the head of Christ. So let's see. He is formally an apostate through willful and therefore culpable repudiation of the Christian faith. Who refuses submission to the Roman pontiff is at least a material schismatic. Moral culpability. This is so like... It was thus common in the past to speak of the schismatic Orthodox cultures who broke with Rome in 1054. As with heresy, we no longer assume the moral culpability of those who belong to churches in schism from Rome, and thus no longer refer to them as schismatics based on their material schism alone. It is so weird how like they use these roundabout definitions to just make like these exclusive these exclusive excuses, like for these certain groups, like for the Orthodox. Oh no, the Orthodox aren't schismatics. No, they're not schismatics. Oh, they refuse submission to the Roman Pontiff. Yeah, but we we don't assume moral culpability of those who belong to Orthodoxy. But that's so weird because didn't you say that if you don't have invincible ignorance, that you are a heretic? Like, what is this formal versus material? Like, it's so weird and confusing. Whatever. Yes, formally guilty of heresy. The church applies the penalty of excommunication. So I guess what that means, to rip away all this fucking unnecessary bullshit confusion, is that people who say that anyone who willingly embraces what they know to be contrary to, when they say revealed truth, they're talking about scripture or church teaching. So what they really mean is anyone who willingly embraces, formally and thus willingly, so they're making these synonyms, willingly embraces what they know to be contrary to the scripture or tradition. So I wonder, does that apply to modernist Catholics? Does that apply to any Catholics who formally disagree with the teachings or embrace the teaching that the church condemns? It's so fucking confusing. Oh my god. I'm done with that. Okay. So this person's going to do a formal apostasy, which means that according to the church, they are going to be excommunicated automatically. Automatic excommunication means no one has to say anything. It just means that, like, spiritually, you're cut off from the church, and the only way to be saved at that point, like, according to the church, this person is doomed to hell, unless they go and they, like, get permission from the bishop and the bishop brings them back into the church. And your section on scrupulosity hits home. For years, I struggled with that internal surveillance regarding sexuality and thoughts, feeling like my own brain was a crime scene. It wasn't until I found Spinoza's logic that the fear really broke. Realizing that God, nature, substance doesn't have the moods or a need for worship made the whole concept of mortal sin. Realizing that God, nature, substance doesn't have moods or a need for worship. Okay, yeah, I don't know what that is. It sounds kind of interesting. Mortal sin looked like the middle management power trip it actually is. Also, your mention of how the system moralizes things we can't control, like neurodivergence or biology, is key. As an autistic person, my sense of justice couldn't reconcile a loving God with a system that treats natural human ecstasy as a reason for eternal torture. Reclaiming my body and my joy through archetypes like Lilith and Aphrodite has been my way of uninstalling that toxic mimetic system you described. Thanks for sharing the video on these points. It's a great map for anyone still stuck in that shame spiral. Okay, yeah, that's an interesting take. I don't know what the archetypes of Lilith and Aphrodite are. I think Aphrodite, isn't she a god of like a Greek god or something? I don't know. But yeah, I'm glad that my post helped this person. All right, so this person is doing a formal apostasy. All right, I'll make my formal apostasy here. I don't believe in what the Catholic Church teaches. I think it's wrong. I think it's despicable and it's disgusting and it's manipulative. I think the Catholic Church is disgusting and manipulative and despicable. And I'm no longer a Catholic. So there's my formal apostasy inspired by this person's. I want to check out their account and see if they're a bot account or not. So me saying that, I believe, what the heck? In me saying that technically means, according to the doctrine, that I'm going to hell unless I go to the bishop. Wait. That's interesting. Oh God. Okay, that's really kind of disturbing. Okay, well, anyway, um, yeah, I'm wondering if these are bot accounts. That person didn't seem like a bot. I think they were just autistic. I think that same person might have commented on another post I made a few months ago um, when I made post, my original kind of post that had less refined versions of this. Anyway, it's interesting because I actually don't know how much of Reddit is comprised of bots. Oh, well, that's a big fucking range. 5 to over 50% of Reddit users or traffic may be bots, with a common conservative estimate of 5 to 20% for overall user counts. Jesus. They need to actually estimate 50 to 60%. So, like, what the fuck? Reddit prevalence of bots suggests to be very high. Yeah. That's why some of the top posts are absolute shit. Dude, like, this guy might be a fucking bot for all I know. This is the thing. Like, why the fuck do I even bother? Like, what kind of name is this? Like, I wonder if these bots are, like, talking about the bots. Like, did they not even bother to change their username? Like, my username, I changed mine manually. But, I don't know. What is this? SPL Center? Oh, this is some kind of... What is this? SPL? Oh, I've heard of these people. Southern Poverty Law Center. I have heard of these people. Especially my Catholic days. Mostly was bad stuff about them. I don't really know anything about them. Anyway. Alright, they're probably picking out fucking the most extreme. Who the fuck is Thomas Drolsky? I don't know. Anyway, basically, that's my rant. I hope that, thank God it recorded the audio. That's my rant. I was fucking pissed off, and I probably just got myself pissed off over fucking bot accounts. And I don't know. Reddit's weird. I feel like there's no fucking point of posting things there anyway, but I don't really know where else to put this stuff because I want to share it with someone. You know, I just don't. Where else am I supposed to share it? I don't know. So, I mean, hopefully YouTube. That's why I'm doing this. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed somewhat listening to me talk about that. Especially if you're a fellow deconstructor. I'm going to be reacting to another video actually right after this. I'm in the pissed off mood. I'm going to be reacting to a Catholic reacting to ex-Christians who deconstructed.